The one team is everyone, irrespective of what you do, being able to understand the role that they play around achieving the goals. That's easy if you're a bedside provider, if you're a nurse or a physician or advanced practice provider. But what if you're an environmental services person? What if you're someone who's been cleaning the snow from the campus the last week? Someone who works in contracting? How does what you do impact those three goals? And I say to people, you must be able to see that. If you have trouble with it, I'll be happy to meet with you because we can really figure out in about 10 or 15 seconds how what you do makes a difference. And it was more of an issue at the bottom. When I say the bottom, those individuals who aren't involved in direct patient care and have a hard time understanding what their role is.
Welcome to Return on Empathy, a podcast brought to you by the Empathy Collective, a community where leaders come together to navigate change without losing their humanity. Whether you are a plant manager trying to humanize the factory floor, a small business owner wanting to build a strong culture that lasts, or a corporate executive striving to prevent burnout in your team, you belong in this community. Visit theempathycollective.com to join our community and use the discount code ROEPOD107 to get 10% off your membership. In healthcare, the stakes are never abstract. Every decision, every interaction, every moment of care carries real consequences for patients, for families, and for the people who show up every day to serve them. In environments like that, empathy isn't optional. It's fundamental. Today's conversation is about what it means to lead with humanity when lives are on the line. My guest is Dr. Greg Argyros, president of MedStar Washington Hospital Center, the largest hospital in the Mid-Atlantic region, where he is responsible for the quality, safety, and experience of care delivered by more than 8,000 teammates. Dr. Argyros began his career in the U.S. Army as a pulmonary and critical care physician, eventually leading some of the largest and most complex medical organizations in the Department of Defense. Today, he brings the same clarity of purpose to healthcare leadership in one of the most demanding civilian environments imaginable. At the center of his leadership philosophy is a simple but powerful idea. Patients are the North Star, and every member of the organization is part of one team responsible for getting it right. In this episode, we talk about recognizing the often unseen contributors to patient care, about leading with empathy amid workforce shortages and rising workplace violence, and about creating a hospital culture where people feel valued, protected, and proud of the role they play. This is Return on Empathy. Welcome to the show, Greg. It's really nice to have you here. I haven't had any hospital leaders on my show yet, so congratulations on being the first.
Thank you.
It's really, really a delight to have you here, and I think we'll cover some interesting topics that probably have not been covered yet in leaders with other industries. So I look forward to digging in. But before we do that, I just want my listeners to get to know you as a person a little bit better. So what did your career journey look like, and how did you end up as president of a hospital?
Well, it's a long story, but I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version of it. I went to West Point for undergrad and had no interest in medicine at that time. I didn't even know you could go to medical school out of West Point, but took a class the second semester of my sophomore year, which essentially was human physiology, and that was it. I knew this was what I needed to do for the rest of my life. 2% of every service academy class can go straight to medical school. So I did that. I went to University of Pittsburgh for medical school, and then came to Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. for my internal medicine residency and my pulmonary and critical care medicine fellowship. And that really was, the critical moment for me from a leadership standpoint. Pulmonary critical care medicine is a combined specialty. When you're not taking care of critically ill patients in the ICU, you take care of patients with lung disease. But when you're in the ICU, it's a completely different structure. It's a team-based structure. The best outcomes in the ICU come from not just one individual, but how the group of individuals, physicians, nurses, respiratory therapists, pharmacists, nutritionists, all work collaboratively together and the best interest of the patient. And from there, every aspect of what I've done in my career has been around team and team building, bringing again that same recognition that the best outcomes are achieved by the members of the team. As I got into leadership roles, I began to focus more on the individual members of the team, how each and every one of them requires different feeding and watering to get them to the best, place for each one of them, and how you need to work with each one of them on how they have their role, what they do makes a difference for the team. And, I spent 25 years in the military, had wonderful experiences there that actually translated well into the civilian sector. I've been at MedStar Washington Hospital Center for 13 years, was chief medical officer, so in charge of all the medical care, quality, safety, and the performance of the physicians and advanced practice providers for 5 years. And then I became president in 2018. So I'm in my 8th year as president here. MedStar Washington Hospital Center is the biggest and most complex hospital in the Mid-Atlantic region. We have 910 beds, and we take care of everything that you can imagine except for pediatrics. So while we deliver more babies and have the busiest neonatal ICU, once you're discharged from the nursery or neonatal ICU, you don't come back till you're an adult. So, steering that big ship and the, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of patients that are seen every year to get the best outcome for our patients and to be the best place to work was a challenge from the time that I started. Over the last 13 years, we've made remarkable progress, not just me, but my entire team and the entire 8,000 members that make up the team at the hospital center in getting us to where we want to go. And that is, ensuring that we provide the highest quality and safest care for our patients, the best experience for patients, families, and what we added during COVID, each other, recognizing the importance of burnout and having to have each other's back, and then being the best place to work. I mean, if you're the best place to work, if you can recruit and retain the best and brightest, you will be successful in meeting your other two goals. And that's been a priority for me. And knock on wood, we continue to move the organization in the right direction.
It's such a fascinating journey, and I love that it started with a human physiology
Yeah.
class, and then it just clicked. That's why I love hearing about career journeys from each of my guests, because it's always unique, it's always different, and how you find your path and where you're meant to be it's different for everyone, and it's so cool to learn about that. So I love I love your mindset around the one team approach, and it's a huge team, 8,000 teammates across the hospital and all the different stakeholders involved. When you first joined the hospital, you mentioned that you had some challenges initially, and eventually you were able to overcome some of those challenges. What were those challenges that you were facing initially as a hospital leader?
Where I think many organizations struggle is if they're siloed organizations, and a team is not siloed. A team is all working together towards that same common goal. We had individuals and we had services that were sort of designed to be successful in their own right, but being able to expand that mindset across the entire organization and recognize the importance of every person that works here in achieving our goals was a challenge initially. And I will say part of the reason why we've been successful is the messaging has been consistent. I told you what our three priorities are around quality, safety, patient experience, and being the best place to work. And we say that we do that as one team. What is the one team? The one team is everyone, irrespective of what you do, being able to understand the role that they play around achieving the goals. That's easy if you're a bedside provider, if you're a nurse or a physician or advanced practice provider. But what if you're an environmental services person? What if you are someone who's been cleaning the snow from the campus the last week? Someone who works in contracting. How does what you do impact those three goals? And I say to people, you must be able to see that. If you have trouble with it, I'll be happy to meet with you because we can really figure out in about 10 or 15 seconds how what you do makes a difference. And it was a challenge early on. And I would say it was less of a challenge from, those in the hierarchy of the organization. It wasn't an issue at the top. It was more of an issue at the bottom. When I say the bottom, those individuals who aren't involved in direct patient care and have a hard time understanding what their role is. So I have been going out of my way to ensure, and other members of my leadership team do the same thing, go out of our way to recognize those individuals. I don't know if you're a football fan or not. Offensive linemen in the NFL, if their name is mentioned by the PA announcer, something's bad. Something bad has happened. They held somebody or they were offsides. And our goal is to ensure that people are recognized in a positive way in those many departments that don't get the accolades that they should, but play a critically important role. And I'll give you a couple examples of what I mean by that. So I got a call one day from the chair of cardiac surgery. He had a patient in his office, and the patient wanted to talk to me about environmental services, the people that clean the building. And I was like, okay, fine. And what I learned was the patient had had 5 surgeries in order to save her leg, and they had saved her leg. And that patient didn't talk 1 second about the medical care. That's assumed to be good. She came into the hospital to get her leg fixed. Her leg was fixed. We did what we were supposed to do. But she wanted to talk about the individual who cleaned her room. And the individual had cleaned her room for several days, and he came upon her room, and he could hear that she was crying inside. We had 2 choices. He could go into the next room, clean it, and hopefully she would stop by the time he came back, or he could go in and engage with her. He went in. She had just been told she needed another surgery. She wasn't going to be going home like she thought. And he did the only thing that he could do, and that was ask her what he could do. What can I do to help? She said, I would really love a chocolate cupcake. And there were no medical reasons why she couldn't eat a chocolate cupcake. So he got her a chocolate cupcake, and he brought her chocolate every day for the rest of her hospitalization. That is all she could remember. And that is a perfect example of what I mean by saying every person plays the role, because that was the key element of her hospitalization, not the care, which was great. It's assumed it's going to be great. It was what this gentleman did. We talk about if you see something, say something. So we teach all of our employees about the early warning signs of stroke, early warning signs of a heart attack, what to do to prevent burns. And I've recognized 2 patient transporters, and these individuals spend quality time with patients as they're moving them around the building, waiting for an elevator, get to talk with them a little bit. And these 2 individuals on 2 separate occasions took someone for an MRI, and on their way back, the person's condition changed. They stopped communicating with them. There was just something different about them. Now, those patient transporters had 2 choices. They could deliver the patient back to the unit, and they did their job. They are a patient transporter. Or they could say, something is wrong. This is an emergency. Raise the red flag. And they both did the latter. Came screaming off the elevator onto the unit. Something is wrong. They're not medical people, but they recognize that something is wrong. In both situations, the patient was having a stroke. The successful treatment of a stroke is time sensitive. So the fact that they got attention to these individuals within minutes allowed both of them to walk out of the hospital with no deficits at all. That's one team. So again, we go out of our way not just to recognize the clinical great work that's being done, but the everyone else that is part of that one team. And that empowers them, makes them feel good about themselves, and helps with recruitment and retention of individuals. We love it when we hear stories of people starting in the gift shop, working in the gift shop. And now one of my vice presidents started as an 18-year-old working in the gift shop. Now she's a vice president here. So we have many stories like that. We highlight it, and that's how you engage people. That's how you bring them in if they feel like they're part of what we do. Not just delivering food and picking up the trays, not just cleaning the room, not just moving a patient from one location to another, but having an impact on what the patients do. That's one team. And again, the those that see me when I'm out, I just gave an award to an individual. They know that I say the same thing every time. That's intentional. These are our goals, these are our priorities, and we do it as one team. And this is how you made a difference. And that makes it easy. There's no cloudiness, grayness about I mean, it's all about the patient and our people, which is what those priorities are. And knock on wood, I'm not naive. I know that we haven't fully reached where we want to in every part of the organization. We have 8,000 people that work here, but we've turned this battleship around. It's a Navy analogy, and I'm in the Army, but people understand how big a battleship is, and we're moving in the right direction organizationally.
I love the stories you shared. It actually reminds me a lot of, I don't know if you're familiar with Zach Mercurio's work or his book, The Power of Mattering.
Yeah.
He's researched mattering in the
Yes.
workplace, and one of the examples that he shares from his research is a janitor in a college dorm, and she was feeling a little down, feeling like maybe she could have done something better with her life, and her boss sat her down one day and said, "Do you know what you do? Like, do you know the impact of your work?" And she was like, "Well, I clean. I'm here to clean." And he said, "No, you go in there and clean those bathrooms to prevent those kids from getting sick. That's why your work matters." And that completely shifted her mindset and her empowerment and her ability to show up every day feeling engaged and truly knowing her role beyond just cleaning. And to your point, beyond just clinical care and patient outcomes. It's like this whole team together, regardless of their role, is contributing to that greater good. And I'd love to understand how you actually operationalized that. It's great seeing the outcome. And now that you have all these people coming together and automatically looking for signs, even if they're not a doctor, they're seeing that there might be signs of a stroke, or they're bringing a woman a chocolate cupcake. How did you get to that point? Like, how are you able to, across 8,000 people, help leaders instill that sense of belonging and mattering across the entire organization so that it's embedded in the culture and it's becomes automatic part of people's behavior?
Simply one person at a time. It involves getting to know people beyond what their title is, beginning to know them. And my calendar, when I was chief medical officer and now as president, is frequently filled not with strategic planning meetings or marketing meetings, but time being spent with people to see what makes them tick, to understand what their personal priorities are and where they want to go. And it's been a journey. I said I've been a leader for 13 years. It's been 13 years of this. This doesn't happen overnight. And it's also not due to the efforts of one person. You need a village. I need a group of leaders that understand what that mission is, are committed to it, and help carry it out. I'll give you a couple examples. COVID was a challenge for us, like it was for anyone else. I mean, for many other healthcare organizations, but it was our one team working together that allowed us to get through those very dark moments at the beginning where we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know how it was being transmitted. We had people that were caring for critically ill patients who had young people or parents at home with medical conditions, and they didn't know whether they were going to be bringing something home to them or not. Yet they were completely committed to what we did, and we had leaders rounding continuously from the middle of March until June, 24/7, so that we could be available for our team. They saw us. They were able to provide feedback immediately if there was some challenge they had, or we needed to pass on some information to them, because there was a lot of pivoting that occurred those first few weeks, and it allowed us to successfully get together. I use that as one example. A second example is what happened 2 weeks ago when we had the bad weather. The organization knew exactly what it needed to do. Patients don't stop coming in. Patients still need care. Whereas in the past being 10 years ago, the senior leaders would have to be in the hospital to ensure that everything was done correctly, the way we wanted it to be. That didn't need to happen at all, because we have layer upon layer upon layer of leaders who understand that mission, and are able to handle it with a simple Zoom call twice a day just to make sure that questions are answered. So it takes a dedicated group of leaders who are committed to the mission and are consistent in their actions. I have a leadership team now that has 23 people on it. It's the senior vice presidents, vice presidents, and the assistant vice presidents who help me steer this massive organization. And, I cry every time I lose someone, either to promotion or retirement, but the next person we bring in is better. And it's better because people know, and the person is better because people know this organization and they want to work here. They want to be part of it. I lost my chief operating officer a couple of years ago who I was very close, but she was promoted to be a president elsewhere in MedStar, and we had more than 100 applicants for the position over about a 72-hour period, as far away as Arizona, South Carolina. And we shut off the applicants after 3 days because, I mean, somewhere in that group was the person. And people are not going to choose to apply to an organization that they don't want to be a part of, that doesn't have the same kind of values that they personally have. And it really has allowed us to bring in a group of leaders who are so committed. Two of my most recent leader interviews, the person I was interviewing broke down in the middle of the interview. And some might say, well, that would be a reason to not bring them on. 180 degrees wrong on that. These people became emotional because they were so committed. As we talked about what we do here and what is expected of us, they were so committed. It was almost like, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been waiting for. And one has been with us for about a little over a year. The other one will be starting in a couple of weeks. And that same emotion, that same passion has driven every single thing that they do. It wasn't an act. It wasn't a situation where someone was emotionally unstable. No, they were just so committed to what we do that they fit in beautifully with the team. So I've been fortunate that I've been able to bring in leaders at many levels like that who completely understand what our mission is. We're an inner city academic medical center. There are, difficulties that are associated with caring for a large inner city population that you wouldn't find at a place out in, where there was less government payers, et cetera. And the people that work here understand our mission, understand what we do, and are completely 100% committed to it. So it's taken us time to get there, because if you have a leader who is not in sync with what we need to do, they'll sort of be like a cancer in the organization. That part of the organization will not just be negatively impacted themselves, they could potentially negatively impact others. And we've had to make difficult personnel decisions if that's the case. We've got to be disciplined. Not disciplined, I'm going to slap you on the wrist, but disciplined in that we're consistent in what we do and how we do it. You don't want a boss who you have to guess which side of the bed they get up on to know whether you're going to have a good or a bad day. It has to be the same, or as close to same as it can be. And that really involves spending all that time with people to get to know them. Those are the best parts of my day, when I'm, having a professional development discussion with someone, or meeting with someone who's new to the organization. Best use of my time, because whether we continue these regular meetings or not, we've established that relationship. They've heard from me about what our priorities are, and hopefully as they move through the organization, they will see that. But I say to them, if you don't, and you're having problems being able to communicate within your area, just email me. I have an open door policy. Use it. I don't say take advantage of it, because that sounds like someone's taking advantage of. No, just use it. I said, my last name is difficult to spell, but if you've ever had a gyro sandwich, Gyros, put an AR in front of it, that's me. Just email me and we'll meet wherever you want to meet so that we can continue the conversation. And it's great for me because I get to know things that I didn't know. And hopefully it's great for them because they have an outlet for whatever they want to discuss. And the goal being, how can we improve the organization and how can we make it such that they stay with us? I'd love to give 50-year watches to everyone. Last week, I gave a 43-year retirement and a 48-year retirement to two of our lab professionals. They work, down in the basement, processing specimens all day. And these folks have been doing this for 48 years. but we don't provide high quality care and safe care if the lab isn't doing what they're supposed to do. That's an easy story to tell when you talk about what is your role in allowing us to meet our mission.
If you are loving this conversation with Greg, this is exactly the type of stuff we are diving into in our brand new online community for change leaders, the Empathy Collective. All leadership levels are welcome, from the front lines to the C-suite. If you would like to join the Empathy Collective community, visit theempathycollective.com and use the discount code ROEPOD107 to get 10% off your membership. We can't wait to see you there. Absolutely. And I love that you're so disciplined about remaining consistent, because I think in this environment that we're all in right now, regardless of industry, you use the battleship analogy and trying to steer the ship. I feel like we're just constantly dealing with choppy waters regardless. So there's constant change, there's constant flux. So the fact that you have that compass and that consistency within your workplace culture, that gives something for your people to hold on to that is consistent and it's not constantly changing, which is great. But I'd like to go back to the difficulties and the challenges that healthcare leaders face. You mentioned COVID, but another thing that you brought up to me offline that I think my listeners would be interested in is around the increasing workplace violence that your team has to face. Actually, I was doing some research before our interview and I found a recent report that was published in June of last year by the University of Washington, and they were estimating the financial burden of violence in hospitals to be 18.27 billion. So that's just the financial side. I can only imagine the psychological impact that your employees might be experiencing with this. Can you talk a little bit about this? Like, why are we seeing violence in hospitals?
So many people don't know this, but the industry that suffers the most from workplace violence is the healthcare industry. I don't think people would believe that, but that's been consistently shown in study after study. And when we talk about workplace violence, we hear a lot on the news about people going in with guns and shooting people and stabbing people. Certainly, that is a risk, and that's something that we take that risk very seriously. Far more of the workplace violence is the one on one violence, where a nurse is screamed at, spit on, punched, harassed, in whatever way you could think of. And that is what happens every day in healthcare. And the cost that you're referring to is really the human cost of that. And what's the human cost? I mean, what could possibly happen with that? Well, someone who has been so committed to providing care may finally say, you know what, I'm fed up with it. I didn't sign up for this to be abused by my patients, and they get out of healthcare. That's the loss. But think about what that person has invested in their life from an education and training standpoint. Think about what we as an organization, what their school has invested in them. That is the challenge. It's really the human cost of that one-on-one risk that occurs. And we know that in today's world, the instability is that we've been talking about, people act out. Social media, allows people to speak out in ways. And I'm thinking, like, if you and I were having this conversation, I don't believe you would actually say some of these things. People lose track of, what's reality and what's social media. So both patients and families are sources of workplace violence. Recognizing that the theme of our discussion is empathy, the first thing we teach people if they are victims of that kind of one-on-one workplace violence is to try to engage with the patient if you can. Obviously, if someone's swinging at you, there's nothing you can do but get out of the situation. But we work with mitigation strategies to try to de-escalate a situation. Someone may be angry for some reason, and maybe they're just not communicating it well, articulating it well, and trying to engage with them in a way where you express understanding. Never say, well, I understand what you're going through, because nobody knows what someone's going through. But maybe saying, I understand how this could be frustrating to you. How can I help you with this? So that is the initial course of trying to address workplace violence from a mitigation standpoint. Again, if it's a dangerous situation, get out. There's no question about that. but rarely is it that. It's just someone. Listen, most people aren't in the hospital for a good reason. I mean, if they're healthy, if they're a healthy mom having a healthy baby, great. But most people are not in the hospital for a good reason. They don't feel well. Their life may be turned upside down. Never is acceptable. No provider has on their job description, you will be harassed by your patients or by their families in this way. But it's recognizing that it's going to happen and mitigating the risks when it does. We have a code of conduct. We make it very clear to patients that we have a code of conduct. And all it is, be a good human being. That's all it is. There's nothing special for it, but it can be difficult for people, for patients, families to follow that. And we really spend a lot of time working with them and working with our staff. If one of our teammates has had a very bad experience with a patient or family, we have a program called Care for the Caregiver, which is to help support them through this. If you've done any work with people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, we don't want to get to that point, where people are exhibiting signs of post-traumatic stress when when they're about to come in for their next shift at work. It's to be open and talking about it, making sure everyone understands the resources that are available to them, of which there are many, many, many. Because again, if we're going to be the best place to work, you have to make sure that you have an environment in which people feel as safe as they can be.
Yeah. What I heard was two things. I heard how to approach these situations to de-escalate it and really try to be empathetic with the patient or the family member who might be struggling. But then the compassion for caregivers. I love that you actually have a formal program that helps people. So let's go back to retention because I'm sure this workplace violence issue in healthcare also doesn't help with retention.
right, right.
Um, but then you become the best place to work. You're bringing in all this incredible talent. It's so hard for any organization to retain top talent because all the other companies want to bring them in and benefit from their talents. So how do you focus on retention as a strategy? Where does empathy play a role?
Sure. So the first one is that one team concept that we talked about. Everyone wants to be a member of a team and they want to be able to contribute. That is a major contributor to retention. We say to everyone, you have a responsibility as a member of that one team. It's not just to put on your resume one team at MedStar Washington Hospital Center. It is to make sure that you make your leaders aware if there's something that's a challenge, something that we could potentially do better, something that we shouldn't be doing anymore. And if you see something, hear something, smell something like something's burning, bring it up immediately. Bring that to someone's attention so that we can get it taken care of. And if it's related to a patient, get them the best care they need in a timely manner. If it's related to something with a facility, get that taken care of as well. So that's one. We've talked a lot about that already. The second one is establishing a culture where everyone feels welcome. So we have a very diverse patient population and workforce at the hospital center. The majority of our employees are women, which is not surprising when you look at of the 8,000 people that we have working here, 2,300 of them are nurses, and the majority of nurses are women. So we have a high percentage of women, high percentage of African American, high percentage of Ethiopian, high percentage of Latino, high percentage of Asian, very diverse organization. We also have a very diverse organization from a gender perspective. And, from early on in my time here, we have worked very closely with the Human Rights Foundation to do what we can in support of the LGBTQIA plus community. And we are a top award winner from that organization. We were one of the first organizations to have the gender neutral bathrooms and actually train our individuals around how you greet someone in the clinic whenever they come in, so that you are correctly identifying what they are. MedStar started an equity, inclusion, and diversity, a formal equity, inclusion, and diversity program after the George Floyd murder. And it wasn't like we started it just then. I mean, we had always been doing it, but it became a formal program. And I would say for us, the biggest part of that is healthcare equity. With where we are in the city, in the region, we have the opportunity to address health equity challenges on a daily basis. We have the largest population of African Americans that have undergone a heart transplant in America. Not every race has the same outcomes when you're talking about heart transplant, response to chemotherapy, et cetera. So we have worked very hard around that, and it goes from the heart transplant program on one end of the spectrum from a complexity standpoint to a program that we have with our women's services program. It's a Teen Alliance for Prepared Parenting, and that program goes out into the community, goes out into the high schools. And what they do is work with young girls that have gotten pregnant and work with them on how can you get to getting your high school, your degree, getting your GED, um, recognizing that that is such a discriminator in where you're going to go in life. So they're deep in the schools working with these kids to provide support assistance for them. 3 years ago, Allow Institute is an organization, LOWN, that looks at a variety of industries and how they perform from a social responsibility perspective. So in 2023, MedStar Washington Hospital Center was recognized as the most socially responsible hospital in the district, in the region. Okay, it's great. We're a small area, and on the top 40 in the country on the nationwide honor roll. And we got that in 2023, 2024, 2025. From my perspective, and the organization's perspective, when you look at what we do, people look at any healthcare organization from an outcomes perspective, and it is about outcomes, as we talked about at the very beginning of this. But at the end of the day, it's the environment in which you work. It's the environment in which you come to receive care. And if you feel comfortable as an employee or as a patient in the environment in which you work, you feel welcome, irrespective of what makes up your demographic, then you've been successful as an organization. And that is going to go towards recruitment and, even more importantly, retention of people who come here who may have worked or operated in other industries where they didn't feel that way. And it's so important, I believe, from a retention standpoint for us, and from a recruitment and retention standpoint for patients to come in, because who wouldn't want to come to a place where not only do you have good outcomes in the care, but it's a nurturing place that cares about its people, people being patients, families, and the people that work here. And that's why we've been successful in being able to recruit and retain. Again, there are some people that are going to leave no matter what you do, but even more so, we've been able to keep people around. And I think it's because they feel empowered as part of the one team, and they're living and working in an organization where they feel good about what they do and what they're a part of. So I think that combination of things, culture and one team together. And you could say one team is culture. It is, but it's different. It's different. It's one thing having a voice. It's another thing operating in an environment where you feel comfortable being whatever you are.
I love that, and I think that dovetails really nicely into our passing the empathy torch piece that I always wrap up my episodes with. The question that my previous guest, Jeff Siegel, had for you is perfect given the conversation we just had, and the strong culture that you've built and your retention strategy really feeds really well into his question. So for those of you who are listening this year for the first time to this podcast, and it's something new that we just started this year, the Passing the Empathy Torch, basically we have each guest present empathy challenger question for the next guest to respond to. And then Greg will pass another challenge to next guest. Let's revisit Jeff's question.
I'm going to make a statement that the ability to take the other person's perspective is the root of empathy. And my question for the next person is, A, do you agree with that? And B, how do you train people to see the other perspective?
Yeah, I think we have to assume that everyone hasn't grown up the same way that we have. And many people have empathy or empathetic because of the environment in which they were raised. Sometimes people go into healthcare, for example, if they themselves have had a healthcare crisis or a family member has, and they want to bring either more of what they saw or keep from happening what they saw to someone else in the future, and they go into it for that. Many people have not been brought up in a household where that was a fundamental part of what they did at home. You were sent, and these are the very young members of our one team, those who this is probably the first job they've ever really had, or the second job, and they haven't necessarily had the role modeling that is necessary. And I think it starts there. The role modeling from their leaders all the way up to me has got to be the same about how we see this, how we do this, how we behave, telling stories, recognizing their peers in front of them. You'd be surprised how much how by giving a coin or a one team pin to someone in a department, and people are looking at each other like, wow, I didn't realize that was the way we were supposed to do things. It was just like, it opens eyes, and it can be the thing that is transformative in someone's life, not just what they do here at the hospital center or in our particular industry, but what they want, how they see themselves. I can do this. One of my peers was recognized for this, and I can do that. And you, again, back to the discipline, you've got to be consistent. There can't be favoritism here, favoritism. I mean, everyone lives in a world where they believe someone's being given the benefit that they are not. But try to avoid that if you possibly can. Again, it's critical for the leaders to spend time with these young folks because they are our future. Not that they're going to necessarily become a nurse or a doctor, but they're going to become a leader in whatever profession they are in. And we want them to have empathy no matter what. I mean, you could say, what is the need for empathy for someone who works on Wall Street? Well, there is. And I mean, we've seen the movies, The Wolf of Wall Street, about how bad it can be. That it doesn't have to be that way. And I do believe that we as leaders will be as responsible for calming things down in this country and people becoming empathetic, talking to people nicely by exhibiting that in whatever situation we work with people. If people live in a household where people are constantly fighting, they think that's the norm. If you're in a household if you're in a workplace where people are always, out competing each other, being not being nice, and not nice, but you know what I mean, then they're going to think that's okay. We've got to be consistent in what it means. When I gave my opening remarks to the organization 8 years ago, one of the people in the audience asked me, "What can we do when we leave this auditorium to start making a difference?" I said, "Greet each other in the hallway." I said, "I'm the chief medical officer. I walk up and down the hallway, and not me, but the title. I say hello to someone. There's only two of us in the hallway, and they look at me like I got three heads and don't respond." I said, "Stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Talk to people. This is a big building. A lot of people are walking through our hallways every day." And that I saw start immediately. And what I hear from patients and families now is that the culture of the hospital center has changed. It's not that big place that provides great care. It's a warm place. I was a visitor, and five people, I couldn't go 4 feet down the hallway without someone trying to help me. That's what I want people to do. And I see that day in and day out in this organization from people that I know that didn't happen more than 10 years ago. So it's providing that consistent, disciplined way of behaving, particularly for our more junior staff who may not have, again, grown up in an environment where this was part of their life, and being good role models for them.
I love that, and I love how you started through a lens of empathy with the young people, understanding that they may not have come from a family environment that was conducive to being naturally empathetic. I'd love to know what your challenge is or your question around empathy for the next guest.
Yeah, so I focused a lot of my comments on kind of the rank and file of an organization, not as much on the leaders, other than the fact that they need to be disciplined, consistent in what they do. But what if you were working in an organization where a fundamental component of a high reliability organization, that is psychological safety, does not exist? And psychological safety is consistent with one team because you're able to speak up. But if you're not psychologically safe, you're not going to do that. How do you come into an organization? How do you work in an organization where being psychologically safe, which includes understanding people, the empathy that comes along with understanding where people are, hasn't been part of the culture of the organization? How do you flip that? Again, that's not an overnight thing, but it is as big of a challenge as empowering the more junior parts of the organization to become engaged because they're important to whatever your outcome is.
That's an excellent question. I believe my next guest is a former biotech executive, so I think she will have quite a few things to say on that. Thank you so much for being with me today, Greg. It was such an insightful dialogue. I learned so much about you and your hospital and the way you approach leadership, and I really admire what you've been able to accomplish. And I hope my listeners today learned a lot from you because I know I certainly did. So thank you for that gift.
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca. It was a pleasure speaking with you today.
If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And if you would like to join the Empathy Collective community, visit theempathycollective.com and use the discount code ROEPOD107 to get 10% off your membership. Life is too short. Let's take care of each other at work so that together we can make this world a better place.